A city consumed. Outbreak's Nightmare in Raccoon City. Released in November of 2003 for the PlayStation 2, Resident Evil Outbreak plunged players into the heart of Raccoon City's devastating viral outbreak. The game was a bold step for the franchise, taking the familiar horror elements and adding a new layer of complexity with online play available. This wasn't just another zombie shooter, though. It was a game that demanded strategy, teamwork, and quick thinking. Outbreak dared to do something different, something groundbreaking for the Resident Evil series. It introduced online multiplayer to the survival horror genre. This was a significant shift as players were now able to connect with others around the world. For the first time, players could experience the terror of Raccoon City's downfall alongside others, cooperating, or sometimes failing to cooperate, to survive the night. The multiplayer aspect added a new dimension of fear and excitement. The game's premise was simple, yet effective. Players were thrust into a city overrun by the undead, with limited time and resources to find a way out. Players took on the roles of ordinary citizens, trapped in various locations across Raccoon City. Each scenario presented unique challenges and required different strategies to overcome. Each character had their own unique backstory and motivations for survival. These backstories added depth to the gameplay, making each character's journey personal and engaging. As the T-Virus ravaged the city, these everyday heroes had to band together, using their wits, limited resources, and each other's strengths to escape the nightmare. The cooperative gameplay required players to communicate and strategize effectively. Outbreak's multiplayer focus was a gamble for Capcom, a departure from the established single-player formula of the franchise and the industry as a whole. The developers took a risk, hoping that players would embrace this new way of experiencing horror. Yet, it was a gamble that paid off, attracting a dedicated fan base captivated by the game's unique blend of cooperative gameplay and classic Resident Evil horror. The game's legacy lives on, remembered fondly by those who braved the nightmare together. The core gameplay of Resident Evil Outbreak retained the familiar survival horror elements of its predecessors. Players explored environments from a fixed camera perspective, solving puzzles, managing limited resources, and of course battling grotesque creatures. The tension was palpable as players navigated through dark corridors and eerie settings, always on the lookout for the next threat. However, Outbreak introduced several innovative mechanics that set it apart from previous entries. These new features brought a fresh twist to the well-loved formula. The most significant change was the introduction of online cooperative play. This was a groundbreaking addition for the series, allowing players to connect and strategize in real time. Beating Halo 2 to market by almost 1 year, players could team up with up to 3 others online, tackling scenarios together. This cooperative gameplay required players to work closely, sharing resources and planning their moves to survive. This cooperative element added a whole new dimension to the gameplay, encouraging teamwork and communication to overcome challenges. Players had to rely on each other, making the experience more immersive and intense. Outbreak also introduced a virus gauge mechanic, which represented the player's infection level. This gauge added an extra layer of urgency and strategy to the game. With all players started out as infected, it forced players against the clock to work together to find a way out. As players took damage from enemies or certain environmental hazards, their infection level would rise. This constant threat of infection kept players on edge, knowing that every encounter could bring them closer to a grim fate. If it reached a critical point, they would succumb to the virus, transforming into a zombie and potentially turning on their former comrades. Allowing has been allies to attack the still-alive players as a zombie. This mechanic not only heightened the horror, but also added a unique twist to the multiplayer experience. These new mechanics, combined with the classic Resident Evil formula, created a fresh and terrifying experience. The blend of old and new elements ensured that both longtime fans and newcomers could find something to enjoy. Outbreak offered players a chance to experience the Raccoon City incident from a new perspective, emphasizing cooperation and survival in a way that no previous Resident Evil game had done before. This unique approach to storytelling and gameplay made Resident Evil Outbreak a memorable entry in the series, leaving a lasting impact on its players. Outbreak's narrative unfolded across 5 distinct scenarios, each taking place in a different location within Raccoon City. From the eerie silence of a deserted bar to the chaotic halls of a hospital, each setting brought its own unique atmosphere and challenges. These scenarios were interconnected, offering glimpses into the larger events of the outbreak from various perspectives. The characters' paths often crossed, creating a web of stories that enriched the overall narrative. Players witnessed the city's descent into chaos through the eyes of ordinary citizens, adding a layer of human drama to the unfolding disaster. The fear and desperation of these characters made the experience more immersive and emotionally engaging. The game's timeline ran parallel to the events of Resident Evil 2 and 3, providing a fresh perspective on the familiar storyline. This parallel timeline allowed players to see how different events influenced each other. Players encountered familiar faces and locations, experiencing the outbreak from a different angle. Iconic characters like Jill Valentine and Leon S. Kennedy made appearances, adding a sense of continuity and nostalgia. For example, in one scenario, players found themselves trapped in the Raccoon City Police Department shortly after Leon S. Kennedy's arrival, witnessing the aftermath of the zombie onslaught firsthand. The tension and danger were palpable as players navigated the dark zombie-infested corridors. Each scenario presented its own unique challenges and objectives, encouraging players to explore, scavenge for supplies, and fight for survival. The need to manage resources and make strategic decisions added depth to the gameplay. The intertwined narratives and familiar settings provided a deeper understanding of the Raccoon City incident, fleshing out the events depicted in previous games. This intricate storytelling made the game a must-play for fans of the series, offering new insights and a richer experience. One of Outbreak's most compelling aspects was its diverse cast of playable characters. 8 survivors, each with their own unique backstories, skills, and motivations, were available to choose from. This diverse roster ensured that each playthrough felt distinct, as players could experiment with different character combinations and playstyles. There was Cindy Lennox, the resourceful waitress with a knack for healing; David King, the enigmatic plumber with exceptional lockpicking skills; and Jim Chapman, the cowardly reporter seeking to escape the city with his life. Each character possessed unique abilities that could be crucial for survival. For example, Yoko Suzuki, the timid student, could fit more items in her inventory, while Kevin Ryman, the seasoned police officer, was more proficient with firearms. These diverse skill sets encourage players to work together, utilizing their individual strengths to overcome challenges and escape the nightmare. The development of Resident Evil Outbreak was a journey marked by both ambition and setbacks. Originally conceived as an online multiplayer component for Resident Evil 4, Outbreak went through several iterations before emerging as a standalone title. A major setback for the game was the fact that only 20% of American homes had broadband access in 2003, and even fewer in Europe, the game's 2 largest perceived markets, adding hurdles to the primitive state of online gaming infrastructure and support at the time. The PAL version of the game, released in Europe, didn't even have a customer support option. Capcom's vision for the game was ambitious, aiming to deliver a truly terrifying online multiplayer experience that captured the essence of the Resident Evil franchise. However, the development team faced numerous challenges, primarily related to the technical limitations of the PlayStation 2. Despite these hurdles, Capcom persevered, determined to bring their vision to life. The developers made compromises, such as limiting the number of players and simplifying certain gameplay elements, to ensure a stable and enjoyable online experience. A final nail in the successful game coffin was slammed home when the PAL version of the game faltered out of the gate. The online option was unavailable for several months after release due to tech issues with European ISPs, and the game ran into a long-forgotten-about licensing rumor as well, although details of the event are scant and never saw wide publication. Of course, licensing issues between Japanese and Western companies over intellectual property is legendary in its own right. In hindsight, Resident Evil Outbreak is both a beloved addition to the RE series and a bad memory for the commercial success of the franchise. The game literally choked on its own successes, being released about 2 years early for it to have the impact and success that this title deserved, due to limited broadband access in its largest markets as well as facing hardware limitations with the PS2 platform. This title still haunts many people to this day, not only due to its endearing legacy, but at the thought at what could have been. The game did moderately well at market, selling 1.4 million copies and even enjoying a lesser-known sequel, File 2, released in September of 2004. It's hard to believe looking back, but Capcom was able to bring two relatively advanced online games to market before Bungie released Halo 2. But in the gaming world, as with real life, a great product, if released at the wrong time, can leave nothing but heartbreaking nostalgia for some, and the hope of what could have been for many. Thanks for watching Yes Japan. Don't forget to like and subscribe.